You're consenting to have sex with protection. It's absolutely mind-blowing that any person would think to do it behind your back when it's one of the most like intimate, close things that connect humans is having sex, and then you're betraying that trust. I was so naive and I just felt sorry for myself. Like I wanted to give my younger self a hug. So stealthing is basically when you engage in sex, you're fully consenting to have sex, but during it, you're having protected sex. During the sex, without your knowledge, they remove the condom or whatever you're using to have and practice safe sex. They remove that without your knowledge. In my case, it was for me to try, I think the motive was for me to get pregnant. But equally, you'll hear people say, oh, it doesn't feel as good with a condom, whether it's for their own gratification, their own pleasure, or there is elements of control in that relationship. Once a lady's like pregnant and got your baby, you're always going to have to be in each other's lives legally.
When did you learn of it?
Literally on the podcast with Paul. So we're going through my life journey. I touched on this topic, which I'd never spoken about publicly before. And he said, you are aware this is rape? And I was like, no, it's not. Whether I was in denial to myself, I don't know. But I was like, no, it's not, because I was fully consenting to have sex with my partner, my boyfriend of 6 months. I was consenting. He said, yeah, but you wasn't consenting for him to remove the condom without your knowledge. And I was like, true. So yeah, it was that.
And how did you feel once you learned that?
Yeah, my whole body was burning, the back of my neck was so hot. And obviously it's not like you're just having a conversation with your friend and they've told you. It's like, I'm fully aware of like the settings and the cameras and this and it. I was like, oh my God, it's just a lot to process, but it made sense.
And did it make you angry?
Not angry, I felt sad for my younger self.
Yeah.
Like I was a baby, I was 19. He was my second sexual partner. I was so naive. And I just felt sorry for myself. Like I wanted to give my younger self a hug.
To sit there and think, actually, I've been raped. That must have been quite traumatic.
Yes, it can be called rape, but for me, I've worked on that trauma. It doesn't matter what the label that society gives it. To me, that was my trauma and that's my experience, and I've dealt with that.
So when you say you've dealt with your trauma, how have you dealt with it? Have you had therapy?
I was a therapy girl, yeah. a lot of money, a lot of...
What kind of therapy have you had?
All different. I've tried cognitive behavioural therapy, and that's ways, I find that more practical for me because it's like giving you resources when you're spiralling or having negative self-talk or negative thoughts. So that really worked for me. And also just like taking care of myself, like yoga, meditation, I find actually like, I think we're all so busy with our lives, everything's so fast paced, but to actually sit there and think, how am I feeling? Why am I anxious? I'm really deep in that and sitting with that. I think it's so important how you train at the gym to keep your body in check. Like I feel like you should do the same with your brain.
Why do you think men do it? I mean, in your case, it sounds like he was wanting control.
Yeah, I think in his case, it was to control me, to make sure that I wasn't going to walk away, or if I did walk away, there'd always be that connection where he could have some element of control. Obviously, with a child, yeah. You could never fully get him out of my life if we had a child together. So yeah, I guess that was his motive. I can't speak for other people, but I guess there's all different circumstances. But I think a lot of it does come down to controlling the woman, trapping her. I think in our society and culture, we're quick to say, women will trap a man because, I don't know, he's a wealthy man or whatever reasons women trap men.
Or a woman wants a baby and a man doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like it can go both ways, especially if the man knows the woman is assertive. She won't deal with a certain level of aggression, violence, talking down to anything. If she's got that drive and assertiveness to walk away, it's like a quick way to make sure that she's always going to be in your life, I guess. Just to have that word out there, people know what that means. And I just think it makes girls more vigilant. If that does happen, maybe once it can be a mistake, maybe twice it can be an accident. But if this is happening a lot, you really need to look for the signs and just to have that word in your mind and know what it is and that people are actively doing this.
But also men need to know, don't they, that women know that that's wrong.
Yeah, and it's not going to be tolerated. Yeah.
And like you say, yes, it's not going to be tolerated.
Because it's not even about just pregnancy, but like sexually transmitted diseases, all of this, you're consenting to have sex with protection. It's absolutely mind-blowing that any person would think to do it behind your back when it's one of the most like intimate, close things that connect humans is having sex, and then you're betraying that trust. It's awful.
Probably people would be too scared to go to the police about it, because I can't imagine the reaction that you might get from some.
Yeah, and also there's not really much evidence in these. It's like he's your word against theirs, kind of. And even with my case, so everything that happened to me, that went to court, and he pled like not guilty in the first.
And what was he charged with?
In the end, he was charged with 2 counts of like battering me, ABH, and criminal damage. But this is another point, like no one touched on the fact all this aggression and violence and beating me came from me having the termination. No one really dug into that. So when I've given my police statement, they've read that, but no one said, was you consenting to get pregnant? Was this your plan to try? Was you trying to start a family? No one even raised that. And back then I was so overwhelmed, being so young, never seeing any sort of violence like that in my life. Like I've never had any criminal record. I've never had any like massive fights. To see all of this and that be my life and deal with determination, it was just so much. I didn't even think about, the stealthing part and the fact that he
You didn't know what it was, did you?
No.
I mean,
I didn't even think to raise that to them and say, I think he's done this intentionally, you know. Or I guess when I would tell close friends, I'd say it was definitely intentional. But I didn't know that was a crime, which I think is the important thing about
but
this.
also men, you wonder if men know it's a crime.
I think everyone's obviously aware that it's like super immoral and it's gross and disgusting, but people don't know that it is a crime, which I think would also, if word got out about stealth and it was more of a known term, it would deter these men as well. If they think they could face time for doing it, no one's going to be taking the risk just because it feels better for their pleasure. I just think in schools, so when we're getting taught sex education, it shouldn't just be about how not to get pregnant, periods, STIs, STDs. We need to be taught and teaching young girls that this is a thing, there's a term for this, it's illegal, yeah.
And have you had people coming forward and sharing their stories with you?
Already, and I think that's the main goal for me. How I was so inspired to hear Lauren Goodger speak out about her trauma, how Maura spoke out about her trauma. It made me think, I want to be more vulnerable. This is my truth. And rather than bottling it up, it's kind of liberating. It's painful and it's horrific what I've been through, but by speaking about it, it gets rid of that shame. And I've had so many women, whether it's just purely on the domestic side, the violent side, and they're like, for you speaking out, you can still be independent. Because I think a lot of us as women, we want to be powerful women. We want to be, it's 2024, we want to be feminists. We want to be strong, empowered women. So to own up and say, actually, behind closed doors.
Be vulnerable.
Yeah, it's hard to admit.